The wind howled through the mountain pass like a wounded animal, carrying with it the scent of snow and something darker. Jennifer Mendoza pressed herself against the rough bark of a towering pine, her breath coming in short, desperate gasps that formed small clouds in the frigid air. Below her, in the valley she had called home for the past 3 months, flames danced against the night sky, consuming everything she had worked so hard to build. The cabin that had sheltered her through the harsh mountain winter was nothing more than a skeleton of charred beams now, the orange glow reflecting off the snow like some hellish aurora. She could hear them still, the men who had come with torches and cruel laughter, their voices carrying on the wind as they celebrated their destruction. "Should have listened when we told you to leave," one of them called out, his voice echoing off the rocky walls of the canyon. "Crippled women got no business trying to make it alone out here." Jennifer closed her eyes, feeling the familiar burn of shame and anger that had followed her across 3 states and countless towns. The accident that had left her with a pronounced limp had also left her with something else, a fierce determination that refused to be extinguished no matter how many times the world tried to snuff it out. She had thought this place, this remote valley high in the Colorado Rockies, would be different. Instead, she had found Alexander Campbell. The mountain man had appeared at her door 3 days ago, emerging from the forest like something out of a fever dream. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes the color of storm clouds, he had looked at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. "I know who you are," he had said without preamble, his voice rough from disuse. "Jennifer Mendoza, the woman who's been running from town to town, trying to convince folks she can make it on her own. Before we see how this ends, tell us where you're watching from and hype this video in the comments." Now, crouched in the darkness with her world literally burning below her, Jennifer understood that Alexander Campbell had been both her salvation and her doom. The men who had torched her cabin weren't random drifters. They worked for someone who had been watching her, waiting for the right moment to strike. She had to move. The fire would die down eventually, and when it did, they would come looking for her. Her leg throbbed with each step, but she forced herself forward. There was only one place she could go. The trek to his cabin took her 2 hours, following deer trails through terrain that would have been challenging for someone with 2 good legs. For Jennifer, it was agony, but she had learned long ago that pain was just another obstacle to overcome. Alexander's cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by towering pines, smoke rising from its chimney. Light flickered in the windows, warm and inviting, but Jennifer hesitated at the edge of the tree line. The decision was made for her when the door swung open and Alexander stepped out onto the porch. "You going to stand out there all night, or are you going to come in where it's warm?" She stepped out of the shadows, her limp more pronounced now. "My cabin's gone." "I know." He held the door open wider. "I saw the smoke." "Did you also see who set it?" Alexander's expression didn't change. "Come inside, Jennifer. We need to talk." The interior of the cabin was larger than it had appeared from outside, with rough-hewn furniture and shelves lined with books. The warmth hit her like a physical blow, and she swayed on her feet. Alexander was beside her in an instant, guiding her to a chair near the fire. "When's the last time you ate?" "I don't see how that's any of your business." "It is when you're about to collapse on my floor." He returned with a bowl of venison stew, made it fresh this morning. Jennifer accepted the bowl with trembling hands. The first spoonful was a revelation, rich and savory and exactly what her body needed. "You want to tell me what really happened down there?" Alexander settled into a chair across from her. "You said you saw the smoke." "I saw the fire. I'm asking about what caused it." Jennifer set down her spoon, meeting his gaze directly. "Why don't you tell me, since you seem to know so much about my business already?" For a long moment they stared at each other. Finally, Alexander leaned back in his chair. "You came here running from something," he said. "Wait one. But it wasn't just the usual troubles that drive folks to the mountains." "How would you know?" "Because I've been watching you for 3 months, and in all that time, you never once tried to contact anyone from your old life. That tells me you're not just hiding from creditors or an angry husband." The accuracy of his observations sent a chill down Jennifer's spine. "You've been watching me? These mountains are my responsibility. Anyone who sets up residence in my territory, I make it my business to know about them. Your territory? Jennifer's voice rose slightly. Last I checked, this was still America. Alexander's mouth quirked up in what might have been a smile. You'd be surprised how futile things can get when you're 100 miles from the nearest sheriff. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion was catching up with her now that she was warm and fed. Her eyelids felt heavy. You can take the bed. Yes, you need the bed, Alexander said, and I'll sleep on the floor. I'm not staying the night. Where exactly are you planning to go? Your cabin's a pile of ash, and there's a storm coming in that'll dump 3 feet of snow before morning. As if to emphasize his point, the wind picked up outside, rattling the windows. Jennifer closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her circumstances. Why are you helping me? She asked quietly. Maybe I just don't want to spend the winter wondering if you froze to death in a snowbank somewhere. That's not an answer. Alexander was quiet for so long that Jennifer thought he might not respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. 3 months ago, a woman with a limp and more courage than sense showed up in my valley and built herself a cabin with her own 2 hands. That kind of determination deserves respect. Jennifer felt something shift inside her chest. I'm not looking for pity. Good, because I'm not offering any. Alexander moved to a chest and pulled out a thick blanket. What I am offering is a warm place to sleep and answers to some questions you've been carrying around. What kind of answers? The kind that explain why a group of men would ride 100 miles into the mountains just to burn down one woman's cabin. Jennifer's blood turned to ice. You know who they were. I know who sent them. The question is, are you ready to hear it? She nodded toward the bed. I'll take that offer of a place to sleep, but come morning I want the truth. All of it. Jennifer made it to the bed and sank down onto the surprisingly comfortable mattress. She listened as Alexander moved around the cabin, banking the fire for the night. For the first time in months, Jennifer felt like she could actually sleep. But sleep brought dreams of Denver, standing in the office of the mining company where she had worked as a bookkeeper. The man behind the desk was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that made her skin crawl. Miss Mendoza, I'm afraid we're going to have to let you go. But my work has been exemplary. Oh, your work is fine. It's your attitude that's the problem. We've had some complaints. Seems you're not as friendly as our clients would like. Jennifer felt her cheeks burn. If by friendly you mean willing to let them put their hands on me, then no, I'm not friendly. Mr. Garrett is a valued client, and if he says you were rude to him... Mr. Garrett cornered me in the supply closet and tried to kiss me. When I pushed him away, he said he'd make sure I regretted it. That's a very serious accusation. Do you have any proof? Jennifer had known then that it didn't matter what proof she had. Men like Garrett had money and influence, and women like her had nothing but their word. She had left Denver that same day heading west toward the mountains, but Garrett's reach was longer than she had anticipated. Jennifer woke with a start, her heart pounding. The cabin was dark except for the faint glow of coals in the fireplace. She could hear Alexander breathing steadily near the fireplace, and she wondered if he was truly asleep. The storm was raging outside, and Jennifer realized that even if she wanted to leave, she was effectively trapped here until the weather cleared. When she woke again, pale morning light was filtering through the windows, and the cabin was filled with the smell of coffee and bacon. Morning, Alexander said without turning around. Storm's passed, but we got about 4 feet of snow. Won't be going anywhere for a day or two. Jennifer sat up, wincing as her muscles protested. You said you'd give me answers. I did. Alexander turned to face her, holding a steaming cup of coffee. But first, you need to eat something. She accepted the coffee and a plate of bacon and eggs, eating in silence while Alexander watched her. Better? He asked when she had finished. Better. Jennifer set down her fork. Now talk. Alexander poured himself coffee and settled into the chair across from her. How much do you know about Thomas Garrett? The name hit her like a physical blow. Enough to know I never want to see him again. He's not the kind of man who gives up easily. I figured that out when he had me fired from my job. Jennifer's voice was bitter. What I don't understand is how he found me here. Garrett owns mining interests all through these mountains, has men working claims from here to California. When word got out that a woman matching your description had settled in this valley, It didn't take long for that information to reach him. Jennifer felt her heart sink. So what now? He burns down my cabin and I run again? That's one option. Alexander's voice was carefully neutral. Or you could stay. Stay? Here? Jennifer looked around the cabin, confused. What are you talking about? Alexander set down his coffee cup. I need a wife, Jennifer. Not a farmhand, not a housekeeper, but a partner. Someone who can handle the isolation and the hardships that come with living in these mountains. Jennifer stared at him, certain she had misheard. Are you proposing to me? I'm offering you a solution to both our problems. Alexander's voice was matter-of-fact. You need protection from Garrett and his men. I need someone who can help me run this place. That's the most unromantic proposal I've ever heard. I'm not offering you romance. I'm offering you security and respect and a chance to build something that can't be taken away from you. Jennifer felt a laugh bubble up in her throat. You don't even know me. I know you built a cabin with your own hands. I know you're brave enough to face down men with torches and stubborn enough to survive in a place that would break most people. And you think that makes me wife material? I think it makes you the kind of woman who could be happy here with me if you were willing to try. Jennifer stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Her mind was reeling, trying to process what Alexander was suggesting. What about love? She asked without turning around. What about it? Don't you want to marry someone you love? Alexander was quiet for a long moment. I'm 35 years old, Jennifer. I've been living alone in these mountains for 8 years. Love is a luxury for people who have the time and safety to indulge in it. What I'm offering you is something more practical, but maybe more lasting. Jennifer turned to face him. And what if I say no? Then I'll help you get to the next town, give you enough supplies to start over somewhere else. But Garrett will find you again, and next time you might not be so lucky. The truth of his words hit her like a cold wind. She could run again, or she could take a chance on something that might offer her security and stability. I need time to think about it. Take all the time you need. We're snowed in for at least another day. Jennifer spent the rest of the morning in silence, watching Alexander as he went about his daily routine. She found herself studying his hands as he worked, noting the calluses and scars, but also the careful way he handled delicate tasks. Tell me about yourself, she said as they ate lunch. Alexander looked up from his soup. What do you want to know? Everything? If I'm going to consider your proposal, I need to know who I'd be marrying. He set down his spoon. I was born in Missouri, grew up on a farm. My parents died when I was 22, and I sold the land and headed west. Spent a few years prospecting, made enough money to buy this land and build the cabin. That's it? That's your whole life story? The important parts. Jennifer frowned. What about family? Friends? I had a brother. He died in the war. Alexander's voice was flat. As for friends, well, you don't make many of those living alone in the mountains. Don't you get lonely? Sometimes. He met her gaze directly. That's part of why I'm making this offer. Jennifer felt something twist in her chest at the honesty in his voice. What would you expect from me? As a wife, I mean. Companionship. Someone to talk to during the long winter nights. Help with the practical aspects of running this place. And maybe eventually children if that's something you want. And the physical aspects of marriage? Alexander's cheeks flushed slightly. Only if and when you're ready. I'm not the kind of man who would force himself on his wife. Jennifer felt some tension leave her shoulders. What about my leg? Your leg doesn't define you, Jennifer. You've already proven that you can handle whatever life throws at you. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight with emotion. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. All right. Did you have anything to do with those men burning down my cabin? Alexander's expression darkened. No, and if I ever find out who they were, they'll answer to me for what they did. The fierce protectiveness in his voice sent a shiver down Jennifer's spine. You'd do that? For me? I do that for anyone who was wronged on my land. But yes, especially for you. Jennifer felt something shift inside her, a wall she had built around her heart beginning to crack. I have conditions. Name them. I want to contribute to this partnership. I'm not looking for someone to take care of me. Agreed. And I want time. Time to get to know you. Time to figure out if this could actually work between us. How much time? Jennifer considered. The winter. If we can make it through the winter without killing each other, maybe we can make this work. Alexander nodded slowly. That seems fair. But you should know Garrett won't give up. He'll send more men. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. Jennifer stood up, extending her hand. Partners? He took her hand in his grip warm and steady. Partners. As their hands clasped, Jennifer felt a spark of something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The rest of the day passed in a strange kind of domesticity. Alexander showed her around the cabin, explaining how various systems worked. Jennifer found herself impressed by the thought and care that had gone into the design. You built all this yourself? She asked. Oh, Defet. Had some help with the heavy timber work, but the rest I did alone. Jennifer ran her hand along the smooth wooden shelves. It's beautiful. It's practical. It can be both. Alexander looked at her with something that might have been surprise. Most women would find it too rough, too isolated. I'm not most women. No, he said quietly, you're not. That evening they sat by the fire, Jennifer mending a tear in her skirt, while Alexander worked on carving a wooden spoon. The silence between them was comfortable. Can I ask you something? Alexander said without looking up. Of course. What happened to your leg? Jennifer's hands stilled on her mending. Carriage accident when I was 16. The bone didn't set properly, and by the time we realized it, it was too late to fix it. Must have been hard, being so young. It was, but it also taught me that I couldn't depend on anyone else to take care of me. Alexander nodded. Independence is a valuable thing. Sometimes it's the only thing. They lapsed back into silence. But Jennifer felt like something had been settled between them. He hadn't offered her pity or tried to minimize her experience. As the days passed, Jennifer began to settle into the rhythm of life in the mountain cabin. Alexander was an easy companion, quiet but not sullen, helpful without being condescending. He treated her as an equal partner in their daily tasks. She found herself looking forward to their conversations by the fire each evening. Slowly, carefully, they began to build something that felt like trust. But even as Jennifer started to feel more secure, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Sometimes she would catch a glimpse of movement in the trees. When she mentioned it to Alexander, his expression grew serious. I've noticed it too, he admitted. Garrett's men most likely, Pavon. They're keeping their distance for now, but they're out there. What are they waiting for? Spring, probably. Easier to move around when the snow melts. Jennifer felt a chill. So we have until spring to figure out what to do. We have until spring to get married, Alexander corrected. A married woman has more legal protection than a single one, especially out here. The practical nature of his statement shouldn't have stung, but it did. When? There's a circuit preacher who comes through these parts every few months. He's due back in early March. That's only 6 weeks away. Is that a problem? Jennifer looked at Alexander, trying to imagine herself as his wife. He was handsome in a rough way, with kind eyes and gentle hands. He treated her with respect. It wasn't love, but it was something she could build on. No, she said finally, it's not a problem. The weeks that followed took on a different quality. Alexander began teaching Jennifer skills she would need as a mountain wife. How to preserve meat and vegetables, how to read the weather signs, how to handle a rifle. Jennifer threw herself into learning, partly because the knowledge was practical and partly because it kept her mind off the enormity of what she was agreeing to. But as the days passed, she began to notice small things about Alexander that made her think there might be more to their arrangement than simple practicality. The way he always made sure she had the warmest spot by the fire. The way he would bring her wildflowers when he came back from checking his traps. One evening, as they sat by the fire sharing tea, Jennifer found herself studying Alexander's profile in the flickering light. He was reading a book, and she was struck by the incongruity of it. What are you reading? She asked. Alexander held up the book. Emerson, Essays on Self-Reliance. Appropriate choice for a mountain man. I like to think so. He marked his place and set the book aside. What about you? What do you like to read? Anything I can get my hands on. Novels mostly, but also books about science and history. I always wanted to learn more than what was considered appropriate for a woman. Out here, appropriateness matters less than competence. Jennifer smiled. I'm beginning to understand that. They talked late into the night, sharing stories about books they had read and ideas they had pondered. Jennifer found herself surprised by the depth of Alexander's knowledge. As February turned to March, the signs of spring began to appear. The snow started to melt, creating rushing streams. The days grew longer, and Jennifer could hear birds singing in the trees. But with the coming of spring came increased signs of surveillance. Alexander had taken to carrying his rifle whenever he left the cabin, and he had taught Jennifer to do the same. The circuit preacher arrived on a cold, clear morning in mid-March, riding a sturdy mountain horse and carrying a worn leather Bible. Reverend Miller was a small, wiry man with kind eyes, and Jennifer found herself liking him immediately. "So you two want to get married?" he said over breakfast. "May I ask what brought you together?" Jennifer and Alexander exchanged glances. "We're both practical people, Reverend," Alexander said finally. "We suit each other." "Practical is good," Reverend Miller agreed, "but marriage needs more than practicality to survive. Do you care for each other?" Jennifer felt her cheeks flush. "We're learning to." "That's honest, at least." The preacher smiled. "Some of the best marriages I've seen started with mutual respect and grew into love over time." The wedding ceremony was simple, conducted in the main room of the cabin with only Reverend Miller as witness. Jennifer wore her best dress, and Alexander had trimmed his beard and slicked back his hair. They stood before the fireplace, hands clasped, as the preacher spoke the ancient words. "Do you, Alexander Campbell, take Jennifer Mendoza to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Jennifer Mendoza, take Alexander Campbell to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Jennifer looked into Alexander's eyes, seeing something there that made her heart skip a beat. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was promise. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Alexander, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was gentle, almost tentative, but it sealed something between them that went beyond their practical arrangement. Reverend Miller stayed for dinner, blessing their union with words of wisdom about marriage and partnership. As the sun set, he prepared to leave, but not before pulling Jennifer aside. "You're a brave woman, Mrs. Campbell," he said quietly. "Not many would be willing to take on a life like this. Sometimes bravery is just another word for having no other choice. Perhaps, but I see the way your husband looks at you, and the way you look at him. There's something real there, something worth fighting for." As Reverend Miller rode away, Jennifer stood on the porch beside her new husband, looking out at the mountains that were now truly her home. "Any regrets?" Alexander asked quietly. Jennifer considered the question seriously. "Ask me again in a year." "Fair enough." Alexander put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into his warmth. "But for what it's worth, I don't think I'll have any." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the first stars appear. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Jennifer knew that Garrett's men were still out there. But for tonight, she was exactly where she belonged. The attack came 3 days later. Jennifer woke to the sound of breaking glass and men's voices shouting in the pre-dawn darkness. Alexander was already moving, grabbing his rifle. "Stay down," he whispered urgently, but Jennifer was already reaching for her own weapon. "How many?" she whispered back. "At least 4, maybe more." Alexander moved to the window, peering through a gap in the shutters. "They've surrounded the cabin." Jennifer felt her heart pounding, but her hands were steady as she checked her rifle. All those hours of practice had prepared her for this moment. "Jennifer Campbell," a voice called from outside. "We know you're in there. Come out, and maybe we won't hurt your mountain man too badly." "Like hell," Alexander muttered. "What do they want?" Jennifer asked, though she already knew. Garrett wants you back in Denver, wants to make an example of you." Jennifer felt a surge of anger that burned hotter than fear. "I'm not going anywhere." "I know." Alexander looked at her across the dim cabin, and in his eyes she saw something that made her breath catch. "We fight." The battle that followed was fierce but brief. Alexander and Jennifer had the advantage of cover and superior knowledge of the terrain. Jennifer found herself moving with calm efficiency, reloading and firing with precision, while Alexander coordinated their defense. When one of the attackers tried to circle around to the back, Jennifer was ready for him. She put a bullet through his shoulder, sending him tumbling into the snow. "Nice shot," Alexander called out, and Jennifer felt a surge of pride. The fight lasted less than an hour. When the sun finally rose, 3 of Garrett's men lay dead in the snow, and the rest had fled back toward civilization. Alexander and Jennifer stood on their porch, surveying the aftermath. Jennifer's hands were shaking now that the danger had passed, but she felt something else too, a fierce satisfaction that she had defended her home. "It's over," Alexander said quietly. "Emmett?" Jennifer looked at the bodies in the snow. "What's to stop Garrett from sending more men?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment. "Nothing, unless we make it clear that the cost of bothering us is too high." "What do you mean?" "I mean we take the fight to him. We make it known throughout these mountains that anyone who works for Thomas Garrett is not welcome here." Jennifer felt something shift inside her at his words. Not just the promise of protection, but the way he said we. They were truly partners now. "That could mean war," she said quietly. "Then we'll fight a war." Alexander's voice was steady. "I won't let him take you away from here, Jennifer. This is your home now, and I'll defend it with my life if I have to." The sincerity in his voice made Jennifer's throat tight with emotion. "Alexander," she began, but he held up a hand. "I need to say something, and I need to say it now." He took her hands in his. "This started as a practical arrangement, but it's become something more, at least for me." Jennifer's heart began to pound. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you, Jennifer Campbell. I love your strength and your courage and your stubborn refusal to give up. And I'm saying that if you'll have me, not just as a husband of convenience, but as a real partner, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice." Jennifer stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "I love you too," she whispered, and as the words left her lips, she realized they were true. He kissed her then, there on the porch, with the morning sun streaming down. It was a kiss that spoke of promises and possibilities. When they broke apart, Jennifer saw tears in Alexander's eyes, and she realized there were tears in her own as well. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we clean up this mess, repair the damage, and get ready for whatever comes next." Alexander's voice was steady. "Together." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Alexander sent word to other mountain dwellers, letting them know about Garrett's men and the threat they posed. The response was swift and decisive. No one who lived in these mountains wanted outside interference. Jennifer found herself at the center of a community she hadn't known existed. Families who lived in remote cabins throughout the region began stopping by to offer support. She met other women who had come to the mountains seeking refuge, and she realized her story was not unique. "You did the right thing, standing your ground," said Carol Taylor, a woman who lived with her husband and 3 children in a valley about 20 miles south. "Too many of us have spent too much time running from men who think they can control us." It was a revelation for Jennifer, who had spent so much of her life feeling isolated. Here in the mountains, she found a sense of belonging she had never experienced. Alexander threw himself into organizing their defense, coordinating with neighbors to establish a network of communication and mutual aid. He taught Jennifer advanced marksmanship and wilderness survival skills. But it wasn't all preparation for war. As spring turned to summer, Jennifer and Alexander also worked to build their life together. They expanded the garden and repaired the cabin, adding touches that made it more comfortable. And slowly, carefully, they built their marriage into something real and lasting. The love that had been declared in the aftermath of battle grew stronger with each passing day. Jennifer discovered that Alexander was not just a capable mountain man, but also a thoughtful and considerate husband. He never made her feel like her disability was a burden, instead finding ways to adapt tasks so they could work together effectively. "I never thought I could be this happy," Jennifer confessed one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "Neither did I," Alexander replied, taking her hand. "I thought I was content living alone, but I was just surviving." "You've taught me the difference between surviving and living." Jennifer squeezed his hand, marveling at how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been a frightened woman running from a past she couldn't escape. Now she was a wife, a partner, a member of a community that valued her. The final confrontation with Garrett's forces came in late summer. Word came through their network that a large group of armed men was heading toward their valley, led by Thomas Garrett himself. Jennifer felt a familiar chill of fear, but it was different now. She was no longer alone. She had Alexander beside her and a community of mountain dwellers ready to defend their way of life. "He's bringing 20 men," reported Jerry Gomez, a trapper who had ridden hard to bring them the news. "This isn't just about you anymore, Jennifer. He's trying to make an example." "Then we'll have to show him he's wrong," Alexander replied grimly. The battle, when it came, was nothing like the skirmish at their cabin. This was a full-scale confrontation between two ways of life. Jennifer found herself in the thick of the fighting, her rifle speaking with deadly accuracy as she and Alexander fought side by side with their neighbors. The mountain dwellers had the advantage of terrain and knowledge of the land, while Garrett's men had superior numbers. But what tipped away the balance was something Garrett hadn't counted on: the fierce determination of people defending their homes. When the smoke cleared, Garrett lay dead in the meadow where he had thought to claim his prize, and his surviving men were in full retreat. The threat that had hung over Jennifer's head for so long was finally ended. In the aftermath of the battle, as they tended to the wounded and mourned their losses, Jennifer felt a profound sense of closure. The woman who had fled Denver in fear was truly gone, replaced by someone stronger. "It's really over," she said to Alexander as they stood together in the meadow where the battle had been fought. "This part is," Alexander agreed. "But we still have a life to build together." Jennifer smiled, looking out at the mountains that were truly her home now. "What do you think that life will look like?" "I think it will be whatever we make it," Alexander replied, putting his arm around her. "We've proven we can face anything together." As autumn arrived, Jennifer and Alexander settled into the rhythm of their first full year as a married couple. The garden produced a bountiful harvest, and they spent long days preserving food for the winter. Their neighbors continued to visit regularly, and Jennifer found herself taking on a leadership role in their community. She also discovered she was pregnant. The news came as a surprise, though perhaps it shouldn't have. She and Alexander had been truly married in every sense for months now. "Are you happy about it?" Alexander asked when she told him, his hand resting gently on her stomach. "Terrified," Jennifer admitted, "but yes, happy. Are you?" "Over the moon," Alexander replied, his eyes bright with joy. "I never thought I'd have a family." "What if the baby has problems like mine?" Jennifer voiced the fear that had been nagging at her. "Then we'll love that baby just as much as we would any other," Alexander said firmly. "And we'll teach them that being different doesn't mean being less." Jennifer felt tears prick her eyes at his words. This man had become everything she had never dared to hope for in a partner. The winter that followed was the happiest of Jennifer's life. She and Alexander spent the long, snowy months preparing for their child, talking about names and making plans for the future. Alexander carved a beautiful cradle from mountain pine while Jennifer sewed tiny clothes. When spring arrived and with it the time for the baby's birth, Jennifer was attended by Carol Taylor and two other experienced mountain women. Alexander paced outside until the sound of a baby's cry brought him running. "It's a girl," Carol announced with a smile, "and she's perfect." Jennifer held her daughter for the first time, marveling at the tiny fingers and the shock of dark hair. The baby was indeed perfect, with no sign of the leg problems that had marked Jennifer's own birth. "What should we name her?" Alexander asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Hope," Jennifer said without hesitation. "Her name is Hope." As she looked down at her daughter, Jennifer reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had started as a woman running from her past, convinced that her disability made her unworthy of love. She had found a man who saw her strength rather than her weakness. Together, they had built something beautiful in these mountains: a home, a marriage, a community, and now a family. Jennifer had learned that true strength came not from being perfect, but from refusing to give up. She thought about Thomas Garrett, the man who had tried to control her, and felt only pity for him now. He had seen her as damaged goods, but Alexander had seen her as she truly was, a woman capable of building a life worth living. As baby Hope grew from infant to toddler, Jennifer discovered new depths to her own strength. Motherhood presented challenges she had never imagined, but also joys that filled her heart. Alexander proved to be a devoted father, as gentle with their daughter as he was with Jennifer. She's going to be a handful, Alexander observed one evening as they watched 2-year-old Hope attempt to climb everything in sight. I wonder where she gets that from, Jennifer replied with a laugh, remembering her own stubborn determination. Their community continued to grow as more families sought refuge in the mountains. Jennifer found herself becoming an unofficial leader, offering advice to newcomers, especially women who had faced their own struggles. One such woman is Megan Thompson, who arrived with a black eye and a story all too familiar to Jennifer. Her husband had been increasingly violent, and when she had finally found the courage to leave, he had threatened to hunt her down. I heard there were people here who would help, Megan said quietly as Jennifer tended to her injuries. You heard right, Jennifer assured her. But you should know it's not easy here. The winters are harsh, and you have to be willing to work hard just to survive. I've been working hard my whole life, Megan replied. At least here, the work would be for myself. Jennifer helped Megan find a place to stay and introduced her to the community. Within months, Megan had proven herself to be a capable and valuable member of their group. As Hope grew older, Jennifer began teaching her daughter the skills she would need to thrive in their mountain environment. But more importantly, she taught her that being different didn't make her less valuable. Mama, why do you walk funny? Hope asked one day with the innocent directness of childhood. Jennifer knelt down to her daughter's level. My leg was hurt when I was young, and it never healed quite right. But you know what? That didn't stop me from coming to these mountains and building a home and finding your papa and having you. So, being different is okay? Being different is what makes you special, Jennifer replied. Everyone is different in some way, and that's what makes the world interesting. Hope nodded solemnly, then ran off to play. Jennifer watched her daughter, marveling at the confidence that seemed to come so naturally to her. Hope would grow up knowing she was loved and valued just as she was. As the years passed, Jennifer and Alexander's marriage deepened. They faced challenges together: harsh winters, crop failures, occasional threats from outsiders. But they also shared countless moments of joy. Do you ever regret it? Alexander asked one evening as they sat on their porch watching Hope chase fireflies. Giving up the possibility of a different kind of life? Jennifer considered the question seriously. You mean a life where I would have been considered normal? Where I wouldn't have had to fight so hard for acceptance? I suppose that's what I mean, yes. Jennifer took Alexander's hand. I used to think that was what I wanted, but now I realize that the struggle made me stronger. It taught me to value what really matters. And what really matters? Jennifer smiled, watching their daughter's joyful pursuit of the dancing lights. This, love, family, community, the freedom to be who we really are. I wouldn't trade any of it for an easier path. Alexander squeezed her hand. I'm glad to hear you say that because I have something to tell you. Jennifer looked at him with raised eyebrows. Oh, what's that? Carol Taylor stopped with me while you were in town today. Seems there's another woman heading our way, someone who heard about our community and is hoping to find refuge here. What's her story? Widowed young, left with debts she can't pay. Her late husband's creditors are threatening to sell her into indentured servitude. Jennifer felt the familiar surge of protective anger. When will she arrive? Tomorrow if the weather holds. Then we better start preparing. She'll need a place to stay and probably medical attention. Alexander smiled at her immediate response. I knew you'd say that. Is that a problem? Not at all. It's one of the things I love most about you, your willingness to help others who are struggling. Jennifer felt a warm glow of satisfaction. She had come to these mountains as a woman fleeing her past, but she had become someone who could offer hope to others facing similar struggles. The woman who arrived the next day was younger than Jennifer had expected, with auburn hair and green eyes that held a haunted quality Jennifer recognized. She introduced herself as Jacqueline Foster, and her story was heartbreaking. My husband died in a mining accident 6 months after we were married, Jacqueline explained as Jennifer tended to her cuts and bruises. I thought his life insurance would cover our debts, but it turned out he had been gambling, borrowing money I didn't know about. And the creditors came after you, Jennifer said. They said I was responsible for his debts as his widow. When I couldn't pay, they offered me a choice: work for them for 7 years or face criminal charges. Jennifer felt sick at the familiar pattern. So you ran. I ran, and I've been running for 3 months, sleeping in barns and abandoned buildings. Well, you're safe now, Jennifer assured her. We'll find you a place to stay and help you get back on your feet. Over the following weeks, Jacqueline proved to be a quick learner and hard worker. She had skills in sewing and cooking that were valuable to the community, and she seemed to thrive in the environment of mutual support. But Jennifer noticed that Jacqueline seemed particularly drawn to Jerry Gomez, the trapper who had brought them news of Garrett's final attack. Jerry was a quiet, serious man with kind eyes and a gentle manner. I think we might have another match in the making, Jennifer observed to Alexander one evening as they watched Jerry and Jacqueline working together. You think so? Look at the way they are with each other. He's protective without being possessive, and she actually smiles when she's around him. Alexander nodded thoughtfully. Jerry's a good man. He'd treat her right. That's exactly what she needs. The romance that developed between Jerry and Jacqueline reminded Jennifer of her own courtship with Alexander, built on mutual respect rather than passion alone. When Jerry finally asked Jacqueline to marry him, it was with honest directness. I know you've been hurt, Jerry said one evening as the community gathered around a bonfire, but I can offer you partnership and protection and a chance to build something good together. Jacqueline's answer was immediate. Yes, I would like that very much. Their wedding was celebrated by the entire mountain community, a joyous occasion that reminded everyone of what they had built together. Jennifer stood beside Jacqueline as her matron of honor, thinking about how far they had all come. As autumn arrived again, Jennifer found herself reflecting on the cycles of life in their mountain home. Hope was now 5 years old, a bright and curious child who knew every trail in their valley. Jacqueline and Jerry were expecting their first child. Do you think they'll face the same challenges we did? Alexander asked one evening as they watched Hope play with the other children. Different challenges, maybe, Jennifer replied, but they'll be stronger for having grown up here, knowing they're valued for who they are. And if the outside world tries to interfere again, Jennifer's expression grew determined. Then we'll face it together, just like we always have. The conversation was interrupted by Hope running up to them, her face flushed with excitement. Mama, Papa, come see. There's a lady at the edge of the valley, and she looks hurt. Jennifer and Alexander exchanged glances, recognizing the familiar pattern. Another woman seeking refuge, another opportunity to extend the help that had saved them all. Let's go see what we can do, Jennifer said, taking Alexander's hand and following their daughter toward whatever new challenge awaited them. As they walked through the valley that had become their home, Jennifer marveled at the transformation that had taken place. They had all arrived broken in various ways, fleeing different forms of oppression. But together they had built something beautiful and lasting. The woman waiting at the edge of the valley was indeed injured, with a baby in her arms and desperation in her eyes. But Jennifer saw something else there too, the spark of determination that refused to be extinguished. Welcome, Jennifer said, stepping forward with open arms. You're safe now. We're here to help. As spring returned to the mountains, bringing with it new growth and renewed hope, Jennifer stood on her porch looking out over the valley that had become home to so many refugees from the harsh judgments of the outside world. Hope, now 6 years old, was playing in the garden with the other children of their community, her laughter carrying on the mountain breeze. The woman they had rescued the previous autumn, Maria Santos, had recovered from her injuries and found her place among them. Like so many others, she had arrived broken and afraid, fleeing an abusive situation with nothing but her infant son. Now she worked alongside the other women, contributing her skills as a seamstress and helping to care for the community's children. Mama, Hope called out, running toward the porch with dirt-stained hands and a wide grin. Mrs. Santos is teaching us how to make flower crowns. Want to see? Jennifer smiled, her heart swelling with love for this fearless child who knew nothing of the limitations the world might try to impose on her. I'd love to see, sweetheart. As Hope dragged her toward the garden where the other women were working, Jennifer caught Alexander's eye. He was repairing a fence with Jerry and 2 other men, but he paused in his work to watch his wife and daughter with an expression of pure contentment. This was what they had built together, Jennifer reflected. Not just a community, but a family that extended far beyond blood relations. a place where people could heal from their wounds and discover who they were meant to be when freed from the constraints of a society that valued conformity over courage. You know, said Carol Taylor, looking up from the flower crown she was weaving, when I first came to these mountains 5 years ago, I never imagined it would become something like this. None of us did, Jennifer replied, settling carefully onto a blanket beside the other women. Her legs still ached sometimes, especially when the weather was changing, but the pain had long since ceased to define her. We just knew we needed somewhere we could be ourselves. And look what we've created, added Jacqueline, her hand resting on her rounded belly. Her second child was due in the fall, and she was glowing with health and happiness. Our children will grow up knowing they're valued for who they are, not what the world expects them to be. Jennifer nodded, watching Hope carefully braid wildflowers into a crown for Maria's baby son. The sight filled her with a fierce protectiveness and an even fiercer pride. These children would never know the shame and limitations that had marked her own childhood. They would grow up strong and confident, ready to face whatever challenges the world might throw at them. As the afternoon wore on, Jennifer found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The frightened woman who had fled Denver all those years ago seemed like a stranger now, someone she could barely remember being. That woman had believed her disability made her less worthy of love and happiness. This woman knew better. Jennifer, Alexander called from across the garden, and she looked up to see him approaching with a letter in his hand. This came with the supply wagon today. It's addressed to you. Jennifer took the letter with curiosity, noting the official-looking seal in formal handwriting. It had been years since she had received any correspondence from the outside world, and she couldn't imagine who might be writing to her now. The letter was from a lawyer in Denver, informing her that Thomas Garrett's estate was finally being settled. As it turned out, Garrett had died without legitimate heirs, and his considerable fortune was being distributed among various parties who had been wronged by his actions during his lifetime. Jennifer, as one of his documented victims, was entitled to a significant sum. "Well, I'll be damned," she said quietly, reading the letter twice to make sure she understood correctly. "What is it?" Alexander asked, settling beside her on the blanket. Jennifer handed him the letter, watching his eyebrows rise as he read. Apparently, justice has a sense of irony. "This is a substantial amount of money," Alexander said, looking up from the letter. "What do you want to do with it?" Jennifer looked around at the community they had built, at the children playing in the garden, at the women who had become her sisters and the men who had become her brothers. The answer came to her immediately. "I want to use it to help more people," she said. "We could build proper houses for families who want to join us, maybe establish a school for the children. We could create something permanent, something that could help people for generations to come." Alexander smiled, and Jennifer saw in his eyes the same vision she was describing. "A sanctuary," he said. "A place where people who don't fit into society's narrow definitions can come to build new lives." Exactly. Jennifer felt a surge of excitement as the possibilities began to take shape in her mind. "We could call it Haven Valley, a place where everyone is welcome regardless of their past or their limitations." The idea took root quickly among the community members. Within weeks, they had drawn up plans for expansion, identified sites for new buildings, and begun reaching out to other isolated communities throughout the mountain region. The response was overwhelmingly positive. By the end of summer, construction had begun on the first permanent structures of what would become Haven Valley. Jennifer threw herself into the project with characteristic determination, working alongside Alexander and the others to create something that would outlast them all. As autumn arrived and the leaves began to turn brilliant shades of gold and crimson, Jennifer stood on the hill overlooking their expanded community. Smoke rose from a dozen chimneys now, and the sound of children's laughter echoed from the new schoolhouse where Hope and her friends were learning to read and write. "Any regrets?" Alexander asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Jennifer leaned back against his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him and marveling once again at how much her life had changed. "Only that it took me so long to find my way here," she said. "You found your way exactly when you were supposed to," Alexander replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Everything that happened before was just preparing you for this." Jennifer nodded, knowing he was right. The pain and struggle of her earlier years had forged her into someone capable of building something beautiful and lasting. The disability that had once seemed like a curse had taught her compassion and resilience. The persecution that had driven her from Denver had led her to this valley where she could help others find their own paths to freedom and fulfillment. As the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Jennifer made a silent promise to the woman she had once been, the frightened girl who had believed she was broken and unworthy. She would never stop fighting for people like that girl, never stop creating spaces where the wounded could heal and the different could thrive. Haven Valley was more than just a community now. It was a testament to the power of human resilience, a proof that love and acceptance could triumph over prejudice and fear. It was home to dozens of families who had found refuge from a world that had tried to diminish them, and it would continue to grow and evolve for generations to come. Jennifer Campbell had started her journey as a woman running from her past, convinced that her limitations defined her worth. She had discovered instead that her true strength lay not in overcoming her disability, but in refusing to let it limit her dreams. She had built a life worth living, a love worth fighting for, and a legacy that would endure long after she was gone. As she and Alexander walked back toward their cabin, hand in hand under the starlit sky, Jennifer felt a deep sense of peace. She was exactly where she belonged, surrounded by people who loved and valued her for who she truly was. She had found her home, her purpose, and her place in the world, and it was everything she had never dared to hope it could be. The years that followed brought continued growth and prosperity to Haven Valley. Jennifer's vision of a sanctuary for the displaced and different had taken root in ways she had never imagined. The community now boasted a proper school, a medical clinic, workshops for various trades, and comfortable homes for nearly 50 families. Hope, now 10 years old, had grown into a confident and capable child who moved through the community like a young ambassador, equally at home with the adults and the other children. She had inherited her mother's determination and her father's steady temperament, but she had also developed a natural leadership ability that impressed everyone who knew her. "She's going to do great things someday," observed Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the physician who had joined their community the previous year after fleeing her own troubles with the medical establishment that refused to accept women in their ranks. "She already is," Jennifer replied, watching her daughter help organize a group of younger children in some elaborate game. "Every day she shows these kids that they can be anything they want to be." Dr. Mitchell nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind Jennifer's words. Like so many of the adults in Haven Valley, she had come here carrying wounds from a world that had tried to tell her she wasn't good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough to pursue her dreams. Here, she had found not only acceptance but active encouragement to use her skills to help others. The success of Haven Valley had not gone unnoticed by the outside world. Government officials had visited several times over the years, sometimes with suspicion and sometimes with curiosity. But the community's reputation for law-abiding behavior and economic self-sufficiency had generally worked in their favor. More importantly, word of their sanctuary had spread through networks of people who needed refuge. They had welcomed former slaves seeking true freedom, immigrants fleeing persecution, women escaping abusive situations, men whose disabilities had made them outcasts, and families whose religious or political beliefs had made them unwelcome elsewhere. Each new arrival brought their own skills and stories, adding to the rich tapestry of the community. Jennifer had learned to see each person not as a problem to be solved, but as a resource to be valued, regardless of what limitations or challenges they might face. "Mrs. Campbell," called a young voice, and Jennifer turned to see Timothy Santos, Maria's son, running toward her with excitement. At 8 years old, he had grown into a bright and energetic boy who reminded Jennifer constantly of the resilience of children. "What is it, Timothy?" "My mama says to tell you that the new family is here, the ones with the deaf daughter." Jennifer felt the familiar flutter of anticipation that came with each new arrival. This family had written months ago, asking if Haven Valley might have room for them. The father was a skilled carpenter, the mother an experienced teacher, and their 12-year-old daughter had been born deaf. They had faced increasing pressure from their community to send the girl to an institution, something they refused to do. "Tell your mother I'll be right there," Jennifer said, already moving toward the main road where new arrivals typically stop first. The family was standing beside a loaded wagon, looking around at the valley with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Jennifer recognized the expression immediately. It was the same one she had worn when she first arrived in these mountains all those years ago. "Welcome to Haven Valley," she said, approaching with open arms. "I'm Jennifer Campbell. You must be the Morrison family." The man stepped forward, removing his hat. "Yes, ma'am. I'm David Morrison. This is my wife, Ellen. And this is our daughter, Lucy." Jennifer looked at the girl who was watching the interaction with intelligent eyes, while her hands moved in rapid gestures that Jennifer recognized as sign language. She had made it a point to learn some basic signs after hearing that the family might be coming. "Hello, Lucy," Jennifer signed, her movements careful but clear. "Welcome home." The girl's face lit up with surprise and delight, and she signed back rapidly. Her mother translated with tears in her eyes. "She says thank you, and she can't believe someone here knows how to talk with her hands." "We believe in learning to communicate with all our community members," Jennifer replied. "Dr. Mitchell has been teaching several of us basic sign language in preparation for your arrival." The relief on the parents' faces was palpable. They had clearly expected to have to fight for their daughter's right to be included and valued, just as they had been fighting her entire life. Over the following days, Jennifer watched the Morrison family settle into the rhythm of life in Haven Valley. David's carpentry skills were immediately put to use on various building projects, while Ellen began working with the other teachers to develop curriculum for the school. But it was Lucy who truly blossomed, finally finding herself in an environment where her deafness was seen as just another form of human diversity rather than a defect to be hidden or cured. "You know," Alexander said one evening as they watched Lucy teaching sign language to a group of fascinated children, "I think she's going to change this place as much as we've changed her life." Jennifer nodded, understanding what he meant. Each new member of their community brought something unique and valuable, adding to the collective strength and wisdom of the whole. Lucy's presence was already inspiring others to think differently about communication and inclusion. "That's what makes this place special," Jennifer replied. "We don't just help people heal from their wounds. We help them discover gifts they never knew they had." As summer turned to autumn, Jennifer found herself reflecting on the remarkable journey that had brought her to this point. The frightened woman who had fled Denver nearly 15 years ago had become a leader, a mother, a wife, and a force for positive change in the world. Her disability, once a source of shame and limitation, had become a source of strength and empathy that enabled her to help others facing their own challenges. The community they had built was thriving beyond her wildest dreams. Children who might have been marginalized or institutionalized elsewhere were growing up confident and capable. Adults who had been rejected by mainstream society were finding purpose and belonging. Families were healing from trauma and building new traditions based on acceptance and love. But perhaps most importantly, they had created something that would outlast them all. The principles they had established, that every person had value regardless of their limitations, that diversity was a strength rather than a weakness, that love and acceptance could triumph over prejudice and fear. These ideas were taking root in the hearts and minds of the next generation. As Jennifer stood on her porch that evening, watching the lights come on in windows throughout the valley, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction and gratitude. She had found her purpose in life, and that purpose had led her to create something beautiful and lasting. Alexander joined her on the porch as he had so many evenings before, and they stood together in comfortable silence, watching their community settle in for the night. "Any regrets?" he asked, the question that had become a ritual between them over the years. Jennifer smiled, taking his hand in hers. "Only that there aren't more hours in the day to help more people find their way home." "There will be," Alexander replied confidently. "This is just the beginning." As the stars emerged in the clear mountain sky, Jennifer knew he was right. Haven Valley would continue to grow and evolve, welcoming new refugees and helping them transform from broken survivors into thriving community members. The legacy they were building would touch countless lives for generations to come. Jennifer Campbell had started her journey as a woman convinced that her disability made her less worthy of love and happiness. She had discovered instead that her true strength lay not in overcoming her limitations, but in using her experiences to help others overcome theirs. She had built more than just a community. She had built a movement, a testament to the power of human resilience and the transformative nature of unconditional acceptance. And as she looked out over the valley that had become home to so many lost souls, Jennifer knew that this was exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. She was home, she was loved, and she was making a difference in the world. It was everything she had never dared to dream, and it was only the beginning.